Welcome in to the New Orleans Pelicans Podcast, the official podcast of your New Orleans Pelicans. A podcast dedicated to everything you need to know about the squad. Hear from players, coaches, broadcasters, and those who cover the NBA on a daily basis. It's time to flock up. The New Orleans Pelicans Podcast starts right now.
All right, welcome back to the New Orleans Pelicans Podcast, the official podcast of your New Orleans Pelicans. Gus Kattengell, Jim Eichenhofer from Pelicans.com. We're off and running, 14 total player profiles. As we take a look back at the season and give each player some time, some love, Jim, some things that really stood out. We start out with Zion Williamson. Guillory of The Athletic helped us with that yesterday. Obviously, that's the player you start with, right, when it comes to this franchise?
Sure.
But right after that?
Mr. Trey Murphy. He's second in the number 2 hole in the lineup. And, yeah, I mean, I think he's one of the players that people are the most excited about as far as his future. He's only 24 years old. He's made rapid jumps, I think, throughout the first 4 seasons of his career. I think he could have been in most improved player conversation this year if he had played enough games to qualify for that award. He ended up with 53. Or if he had been on the court more, obviously you get to build up your case as far as that award goes. But I think either way, he was one of those players that I think made one of the more impressive jumps because he was already a really good player, but I think he moved up another level, which is something we're going to talk about with Will Guillory.
Yeah, no doubt. We're definitely going to get into that here in a quick second. But, Jim, this is a big week, obviously, for the organization because today, as we record here on this Tuesday, Joe Dumars will be officially introduced and have his introductory press conference to everybody as the new Vice President of Basketball Operations for the New Orleans Pelicans. Last week, that came out. We will hear his vision, I guess, today as we go and sit down and you put yourselves in the shoes of the fans. What do you want to hear today?
Yeah, I mean, as we record this on Tuesday morning, his press conference is scheduled for 1 o'clock, so I want to kind of go both ways. I'm sure there's going to be people that listen. There might be some people that listen to this before his presser. There's going to be other people that are listening to it after he's already spoken to the media. But, I mean, I think, going into it, I mean, one of the things that I'm looking forward to hearing his perspective on is, just for example, I think it's kind of clear and obvious that, I've talked about this a lot, that the Pelicans need to improve defensively. They finished 29th in defensive rating this past season after they had been 6th place the previous 2 seasons. One of the things that's interesting from Joe Dumars' background as both a player and an executive with the Detroit Pistons. So here's a couple facts for you. This is the 77th season of Detroit Pistons basketball franchise history. They were almost an original member of the NBA. They've won 3 championships in those 77 years, and Joe Dumars was the starting guard for 2 of those times, and then he was the GM, the lead executive for the other time. So really all 3 times that Detroit has won a championship, Joe Dumars has been heavily involved. And the 2004 team that he was the executive lead guy on, they were second in the league in defensive efficiency. And in the 2 back-to-back teams that the older NBA fans like ourselves out there will remember, they won when he was a player in 1989, they won. They were second in the league in fewest points allowed. In 1990, they were first in fewest points allowed. So he was also the finals MVP in 1989. So, I mean, if you think about his background, where he came from the bad boy Pistons, their hallmark was just really physical defense, intensity, toughness. I'm curious to hear how much he's going to discuss those elements during the press conference in terms of things that, to me, those are all areas that the Pelicans need to improve. I think they need to bring more of a consistent competitiveness to the court. I think we saw, and obviously we've touched on this a million times, that there were injuries that led to some of the games where they're down a ton of points even by halftime. But they have to do better no matter who's on the court in terms of just being more competitive on a regular basis compared to what we saw, especially in the last couple months of the season. And then lastly, with him, I'm sure there's going to be questions about the composition of the roster, how much he'll talk about, how much the chemist. I don't even know if he's had time to really lock in and look at some of these things, but to me, I think the chemistry improvement needs to happen as well in terms of the pieces needing to fit together. I think the front office has done an excellent job here in terms of bringing in the talent, and they've drafted really well with, a guy we talked about today with Trey Murphy, who was the 17th pick in the draft. Herb Jones, that we're going to talk about on Thursday, was the 35th pick. But I thought the pieces fit much better together in the previous couple seasons than they did this past season. Obviously, some of that was injuries, but I think one of the things that the front office is going to have to look at is how do you create a better combination of offense, defense, hustle guys, guys that get 50-50 balls, guys that bring toughness, guys that bring intensity. It just seemed like the composition of the roster was a lot better suited and balanced out last season or 2 years ago when they made the play-in or the playoffs over the recent couple of years compared to this season where it seemed like it was a little bit tilted too much towards offense and not enough in some of the other areas.
As you were going through that, and again, all very solid points, I don't mean this like I could have summarized it, but it's what we've talked about. The word identity kept popping in my head. Like, you kept giving me one thing, and I'm like, identity. Is it defense? Identity.
Yeah.
They're playing hard. Identity. Like, I think that's probably one of the first things you want to establish in one way, shape, or form that I'm going to be eager to listen to. Like, what are the New Orleans Pelicans? What is the vision of the Pelicans?
Right.
Is this a team that, we're going to get you with length. We're going to get you with hustle. You're going to be thankful to get across the half-court line. We're bombs away. Get ready. Don't worry about the defense. Here come the shots. We're going to give it to Zion. Everybody get out of the way. You know what I'm saying? And I'm not saying we're going to hear any of that, but we should probably get an outline of that, right? I mean, you would assume, because that's kind of where we are, Jim. I kind of feel that, just a lot of focus is going to be on Z. A lot of focus is going to be on some of the younger players, but it's also why it was so important and key, and you kept bringing this up, to play hard the last several weeks for those players like Reeves, like Matkovich, like those guys. Because Joe, maybe he was watching, I don't know, but when he opens the laptop here, or when he turns up the TV and there's tape, and he goes through the roster, what you put on tape is going to be right on that screen, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think another thing, this is a very broad question that he may or may not address in the press conference. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if he doesn't, just because it's so early in his time here. But a broad thing that you have to answer too is, once you figure out what your identity is and once you figure out what your goal is of how you want things to be structured and how you want things to go moving forward, is how much of what's here can accomplish that, how much of that are things that you need to change. And so, I mean, those are huge questions that are above our pay grade to handle. Yeah. But I think those are definitely things that you have to think about when you come off a season like they just had, where, you got to figure out, okay, this is what we want to accomplish. Can we do it with the guys that are here? And then you go forward. So, yeah, I think it'll be really interesting to hear him. And if you have already watched it, what a great press conference that was.
Great press conference.
Yes,
yeah. That's what we're supposed to say. So just hypothetically here, let's have a little fun, and we'll get into obviously Trey Murphy here with Will Guillory. You happen to walk down the hallway with Joe Dumars. He tosses you a dry eraser marker. He goes, you get one thing to write on my board that I got to pay attention to with this team. Mine's easy. More dunks. I love dunks. Keep dunking. You know that, right? I love dunks. That's the one thing I love about that. We saw that with some of the younger players. Trey Murphy attacking the rim. Matkovich. So if he tosses me a red dry eraser marker and says, hey, that's my office over there, you get to write whatever. I'm asking anybody and everybody in the building to write one thing they want me to focus to get this team to do.
I mean, I think I touched on it when I was going through his past history, that it's defense. It's a way to, you got to get back to we know it's there because they finished 6th in defense the 2 previous seasons.
And you have a coach that
It was
wants
different
that.
personnel, granted, no doubt. But to me, that's what you have to do. You have to get back to that, whether it's doing it with the guys that are here, figuring out how you can improve drastically defensively, or trying to make changes to the roster so that you can put yourself in a better position to be competitive and not finish, second from the bottom in defense the way that they did this season.
All right, this is a guy that excited me when he was on the court this season, Mr. Trey Murphy. I know Will Guillory feels the way I do. Jim Eichenhofer feels that way as well. So here's our conversation about Trey Murphy's season and what to expect moving forward. All right, we welcome back again Mr. Will Guillory of The Athletic. He led things off, Mr. Jim Eichenhofer, in the leadoff spot, talking about Zion Williamson as we go through all of our players here, 14 total. Pelicans season review of, the goods, the bads, the ups, and the downs. And shockingly, Will, as we move on to another player, it's Trey Murphy. Injuries, part of it there as well, but also perhaps a season that we may look back at and say that's where it started. Do you kind of have an idea what I'm getting at?
Oh, yeah. We saw the ascension for Trey Murphy this year. I think if there was a most improved Pelican award to be handed out at the end of the season, I think Trey Murphy would be the runaway favorite to win it, just because of, all the aspects of his game that we saw grow this year, the amount of pressure they put on him to do different things, to show a different side of his game. And I think he excelled way more than, at least I expected him to in certain areas. So I thought it was a real nice season for him. And I think obviously there were so many injuries, but I think the Trey Murphy injury at the end of the season might have been the one that hurt the most, just because you saw how much progress he made this season. And then seeing him go down at the point of the season he did, it was just like, man, how much more can this team deal with? As if everything else that happened up to that point wasn't enough.
Will, we're going to be pretty consistently asking all of our guests to kind of describe some of the kind of off the court aspects of some of these players. In terms of with Trey, how do you describe maybe either his personality or kind of the way that he went about improving and just kind of his approach to his game and just kind of the strides that he's been able to make throughout his career?
Yeah, what I would say is, as you guys know from being around Trey, I just said that, some of the aspects of his game that improved that I wasn't expecting. I would say Trey Murphy was not surprised by any of this at all, because Trey Murphy is one of the most confident human beings that I've ever been around in my life. That guy has a lot of belief in self. He believes in what he can do on the court. He believes, the more he puts on his plate, the more he's capable of taking on those demands. And I think he was kind of waiting for this opportunity, right? I mean, it was kind of a not, very well kept secret that at some point during this season, the Pelicans were going to move on from Brandon Ingram and kind of put Trey Murphy into that spot to be the co-star next to Zion Williamson, at least offensively. And I think Trey was ready for that opportunity. He was mentally preparing for it during the offseason. And I think you saw him really step into it in a big way. And I think what we don't talk about enough is, Trey Murphy last summer wasn't really doing a lot during his training because he was waiting for that extension to come in. And we've heard this story a lot with guys where when you're waiting to sign that extension, the people close to you say, hey, don't play a lot of 5-on-5. Don't get up and down. We don't want to risk any injuries before you sign this deal. So we saw him make this jump this year without doing a lot of physical work during the offseason to improve certain aspects of his game. So I think it was a really impressive jump from Trey this year, considering the circumstances. And I think the more comfortable he gets in this role, the more we're going to see him improve.
One of the things that stood out to me when I was looking back at his season and I was looking at some of the numbers and stuff was he played in 53 games and he had 51 starts, which I was stunned by that, because I'm like, when did they have the luxury of the 2 games of being able to bring him off the bench? If you consider how many guys were out and how often there was a steady stream of players that they were trying to figure out, how do we make up our rotation tonight? But anyways, you talked about some of the improvements that he's made too. I'm wondering, is it the kind of thing where is there more for him to get out of his ball handling and his passing? Do you think that there's more room for him to improve in those areas, and that maybe you mentioned how he didn't have a normal offseason. So is it the kind of thing now, and he's not going to have a normal offseason this year either, unfortunately, but is it the kind of thing where it's like that this was just kind of a little taste of what he can do in those areas, and that if he has more time in the gym, that it's something that he can just continue to expand some of those aspects of his game?
Yeah, no doubt. And I think it's something similar that we've talked about in the past with other guys. It's just the more opportunities you get on the court, the more reps you get in a specific role, the more comfortable you get doing it, right? And I think with Trey, throughout the early parts of his career, he wasn't asked to do a whole lot of pick and roll as the ball handler. He wasn't, asked to be an ISO guy, to be a creator for others, to be a guy who gets 6, 7, 8 assists in a game. His job was to basically finish, to shoot threes, to dunk it in fast breaks. He wasn't asked to be that creator, and I think you saw him be more comfortable in that role during this season. And I think the more you do it, the more you adjust to how teams defend you, the more you adjust to what your teammates are doing, when they want to cut, when they want to spot up. That's just stuff that comes with time on task, right? And I think the more he's asked to do that, the more comfortable he's going to be with it. But also, I think, with Trey, again, me and Jim always talk about sitting next to each other at games and kind of the stuff I mutter under my breath while watching games. So often, during the early part of Trey's career, he would have the ball dribbling up the court, and I'll be like, Trey, get a ball up, Trey, pass it, Trey, and don't be dribbling multiple times, because he just wasn't comfortable in that role, and he was so good at just being a pure catch and shoot guy. But I think this season, you saw him just stretching his legs, being more comfortable in situations where he's demanded to do more. And I think it's important for him to be comfortable in that role, because he's stepping up as the number 2 guy next to Zion. So you want to be able to trust Trey to create those opportunities, because the other part of the Trey Murphy experience early in his career was we were always saying, man, I wish Trey could get more shots, right? I wish Trey could get more opportunities. Yep. I wish Trey wasn't just standing in the corner in a lot of these games. And if you're putting the ball in his hands, you're running pick and roll, you're forcing him to be more involved, but also you're forcing defenses to pay more attention to him. And the thing that makes Trey Murphy such a dynamic ball handler is his ability to hit those step back threes, right? To hit those, one dribble pull-ups, or from 30 feet or wherever he's at. And when you have that dynamic, it stretches defenses out. It makes it harder for them to send help, and it also makes it easier for him to make those passes to the corner or to throw those lobs to Yves Nisi. And then it adds another dynamic when he's doing all that stuff with Zion out there, because of all the attention Zion demands with or without the ball. So I think the more you get Trey Murphy to be a dynamic on-ball guy, the more you can just open everything else up in his game. And I think it's something I really want to see him continue to improve on going into next year.
By the way, Will, I noticed towards the end of the season, too, that for a game or two, PR separated us. I don't know if we were accumulating too much power or what it was, but luckily that got corrected, and that we were back in our rightful positions by the last couple home games of the season. But anyway, that's a discussion for another day.
I think that's a whole podcast, to be honest with you. Yeah. Observed by you two. I love it.
But I'm going to throw 2 numbers at you, Will, and I want you to kind of pick which one you want to talk about. We could talk about both of them. The interesting thing about these 2 numbers related to Trey Murphy is neither of them are actually connected to his shooting or his 3-point shot, so I think that's actually a good sign in terms of the progression of his game. The first number is 73, and that is how many dunks that Trey Murphy had in the 53 games that he played. Gus loves this stat. He loves dunks.
Yes.
Trey averaged 1.4 dunks per game this season, which was his career high. His previous high was 1.1, so he made a jump there. And then the second number is 3, which is the times that Trey Murphy had 8 or more assists in a game this season. He had a career high 11 versus Sacramento on February 13th. So by comparison, through his first 3 NBA seasons, he never had more than 7 assists in any game. Wow. So basically, the 3 best assist games of his career all happened during this past season. So which of those you want to talk about, the 73 dunks or the 3 games where he had a bunch of assists?
I love the assist number, and I think we covered that a little bit, with some of the aspects of his game that improved. So I want to go to dunks because I'm with Gus. I love me some dunks too. And in particular, what's interesting about Trey Murphy, I think the conversation a lot of times is also what type of dunks is he getting, right? And I think, Trey Murphy, as good as he is off the dribble, we don't see a whole lot of the LeBron off a pick and roll, one dribble, throw the arm back and boom it. I think with Trey Murphy, a lot of times it's in transition. putbacks off of offensive rebounds, and that's the stuff where you really want to see Trey, force his hand more. I talked a little bit about, wanting Trey to be more involved, so wanting him to not just stand in the corner and watch everybody else control the game. And I think a lot of the times when people would complain about that, I would say, hey, Trey can get himself involved by running out in transition, by attacking the offensive boards. And I think you want to see him continue to utilize those aspects of his game because he's so effective in transition, because of his bounce, because he's so much of a threat to shoot threes in transition, that he can get to the rim and get those easy looks, in transition, but also attacking the offensive board because he plays above the rim so easily. And you want to see him continue to do that and not just rely on making plays out of pick and roll or catch and shoot three-pointers. So I think the dunks are a really important number, not just because, it gets me and Gus excited, but because it shows him doing other stuff to get involved, right? That's what you want to see with Trey, is don't just be a three-point shooter. Don't just be a guy who's making plays out of pick and roll, but just do everything to make yourself an impact player in the game. And I think that's when Trey is really at his best.
Lastly, for me, one of the things that I thought, one of the most interesting quotes of the season was when Jose was talking to the media group, and he said, I think it might have been after a practice or maybe it was at a shoot around or something. He said that he's like, I don't know if I'm supposed to tell you guys this, but I was talking to Trey on the bus, and Trey was saying next year I'm going to be an all-star. Now, I don't want to corner you and ask you, do you think he's going to be an all-star next year? But kind of going forward, do you think that is something that we should be looking at, something that we should kind of monitor, that based on the way that he played this season and the progression that he made, that he can put himself in that conversation, going forward? I know next season, hopefully he's going to get semi-normal start to the season. We don't know that for sure yet, but just down the road, do you think this is a guy that could be in that kind of company?
Oh, yeah, and I think, it wasn't just Jose. We saw a lot of the clips from Trey when he was at All-Star Weekend, kind of doing his correspondent thing, that a lot of his peers were coming up to him and saying, hey, we expect to see you this year. I think one I remember off the top of my head was Kyrie Irving coming up to Trey and saying, hey, you need to be in one of these uniforms next year. So I think that's the big step for him, is just the respect he's already getting from some of his peers. Yeah. And guys pointing to him and saying, hey, he's the next guy. He's going to be one of these guys who makes this jump. Guys see that in him. And I think another thing Trey benefits from also is guys like us in the media, where we kind of evaluate the game differently nowadays because we have access to so many numbers. And Trey Murphy is a guy at the very top of the list who's a advanced numbers darling because of his 3-point numbers, because he shoots a lot of attempts in the paint. A lot of guys who are kind of the stat nerds love Trey Murphy. They love kind of his style of play. He doesn't take a whole lot of the mid-range jumpers that they're very against, and I think he plays a very efficient style of basketball. So the more he gets opportunities, the more you see that efficiency shine through. So I think he's a guy who will get the push from the media, but also I think we're going to hear more and more guys in post-game media from other teams being like, man, Trey Murphy, he's really good. Or Trey Murphy, he had a huge impact on this game. And I think that's the stuff that starts to get you in the consciousness of the NBA world when we start talking about, all-star nods or all NBA nods, where you're getting that respect from the media and from your peers. And I think it's only going to be a matter of time, in my opinion, for Trey before he's in that all-star game, because he's so talented offensively and because he's very smart about the way he approaches the game. And I think, just like I keep saying, the more he gets those opportunities, the more he's going to be able to show what he can do. So yeah, I don't know if it's going to be next year, but I would definitely say that at some point in his career, I expect Trey to be in that All-Star game for sure.
This is a slightly random note, Will, but you reminded me. Another key, I think, to Trey, getting that recognition is to keep having amazing games against Boston. We know that there's a huge Boston Mafia media contingent out there that controls a lot of the discussion of the NBA. And he had 2 monstrous games. He had a 40-point game against them. He had a 30-point game against them. So I think that also helps his case. I think if you're a Celtics fan and the only 2 games you saw of the Pelicans were the games that Trey played against them, you're just like, man, how is this guy not all NBA? He was phenomenal in those games against the Celtics.
Yeah, for sure. You could throw the Lakers in there as well, right? We see Trey have some really big games against the Lakers. So I think that's for sure that Trey loves the spotlight. That's one thing we can say. Trey is very confident, and Trey loves when the attention is on him. So that's one more reason why we can expect him to shine next year.
I'll tell you what, I'm going full dad here because I'm going to take both stats and say it proves my point, especially with what you just said and how you finished in terms of is he an all-star player. Now, we talked about it and brought it up, Jim, in the podcast. I was the one that kind of threw it to you guys, and whether it's round tables or just you and I in podcasts, I'm like, is this guy an all-star player, all-star capable? But Will, you can be an all-star player if you can shoot the three, which you can do. And going into the season, we discussed it, I think, even in Nashville. That next step, I wanted to see Trey Murphy attack the rim. That'll give you some space, too, because then a defender can't just go play you for the three because you can blow by them and dunk it. You competed in a dunk contest, go play above the rim. So then there's Jim's stats of the 70-plus dunks. But the assist also tells you the growth of game. Understanding when he got, and I referred to it with Jim last week, that Denver game, where he got double-teamed from the get-go and had a high number of assists in that game. That told me, okay, this guy has it all. He understands what teams are trying to do. It didn't take him out of his game. He actually helped the team as well. And when you can do all that, that's an all-star player to me.
Yeah, for sure. And I thought, another aspect of his game that I thought really made a serious jump this year, which kind of surprised me because of some of the things we talked about where his off season was kind of different because he wasn't allowed to do so many things. I thought was really impressive this year was the way he was able to get to the free throw line, right? And it's not just the amount of times, but how he did it, right? Kind of the understanding of how to bump a guy at the right time, how to extend his arms and get guys slapping at you. That's the stuff that you see guys kind of develop over years, and I thought he showed that immediately this year, that understanding of how to use his body. I mean, he's a big, long guy. He's 6'9", 6'10", long arms. With guys with that kind of, with those kind of physicality, that they're able to get into the paint and force teams to really make tough decisions about how they're going to contest some of those shots. How are you going to send help? And we see it so often where guys like a Austin Reeves or like a John Morant do this, where you take one dribble into the paint and you extend those arms. And guys start slapping at the ball, and that's how you get easy free throws all the time. And I think we're going to see Trey do that a lot. The more he develops as a ball handler, being able to get to the free throw line, forcing defenders to make tough decisions on how they're defending him. And we know with Trey, when you send him to the free throw line, he's a guy who's 85, 90%. So again, that's more efficiency. That's more easy points for him. So I think he's adding a lot of the things that you want to see from a guy who's going to be a high usage player to be a guy who can score efficiently. It's just about getting more opportunities and just feeling comfortable doing it.
He shot 88.7% from the free throw line, like you said, Will. So we did not get any upset Mama Murphy post-game press conference interview questions this year. So she's
Mama
very
Murphy
happy.
On the Pels podcast.
We should.
Yeah,
we should.
We really should. Will, as I let you go, this is going to be my first summer full-time here, hanging out. Do you want to start like a Summer League 3-on-3? We can go play over at the Pels facility over here. Do a little 3-on-3.
I'm there. Just give me a time and a place,
Will Guillory.
and I'm there.
All right, who's our third player?
There.
Are we taking Jim? Jim, are you playing?
Yeah. There's a lot of shooting on the court if you get Will and I out there. I haven't seen you play before, Gus. I don't know if there's shooting.
I can shoot.
Okay.
Yeah,
I think we got a dangerous squad coming together here.
We're going to try to beat you
and
from
I'm
beyond the
just let
arc.
y'all know.
There's not a lot of defense,
let y'all know,
though.
unlike Trey, I'm not setting any career highs in assists this season.
Okay, I got you. So we're running screens for you. Is that what we're doing?
If the ball comes my way, you can just go ahead and attack the board. That's the only way you're getting it if it comes my way.
I love it. Will Guillory, as always, appreciate the time. And I'm going to try to get this started. I mean, they haven't told me no yet. I haven't asked, but we'll do it. Thank you, Will. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Will.
Appreciate y'all.
Our thanks to Will Guillory as we move on now with two in the books now with Zion Williamson and Trey Murphy. Again, I'm genuinely excited for him. And you kind of heard him touch on it. I know you've touched on it here as well. Timeline-wise, you heard him speak the final Sunday for the season. Mm-hmm. He envisions himself, and this is the key, he sees himself ready for training camp. I hope so, right?
Yeah, that would be great.
It's been two seasons. You brought that up. I can't believe that. 2 straight seasons where he hasn't started the year.
Yeah, we would love to see him be able to have kind of a normal ramp up to the beginning of the season. Obviously, his offseason is not going to be that because he has to go through his rehab. But, yeah, I mean, I think the thing that is really frustrating about beyond the obvious of the injuries that happened this past season is that you hope that they don't bleed into next season. Obviously, with some cases like DeJounte Murray, that it's unavoidable. Yeah. But hopefully with Trey Murphy, we'll be able to see him, participate fully in training camp and preseason and Australia and all those kind of things. But either way, I think and I'm sure he knows this too, don't rush it. Just take your time and be ready when you are. And I think it's most important that, by the beginning of the season or early in the season, you're good to go and not try to, hurry anything.
Yeah, let's get something better from that aspect of it. Well, anyway, thanks for Will for doing that, and thank you for Jim as well. And again, by the way, there are write-ups to go along with these podcasts. So go to pelicans.com, and you can see for yourself some of Jim's thoughts on there, and also some numbers and some statistics and things of that nature. Right? You have an accompanying piece, I guess is the way to say it.
Yes, they can click on that. And of all the years that we've done this, I think this year I've tried to tie the two together, the written part of it and the podcast part of it, most closely. So something that I've been thinking about for the last couple of years, but this year I really tried to pull it together and have, for example, in the written part, there's always going to be a quote from one of our guests that talks about that specific player. So yeah, it's something that people can enjoy, whether you want to listen to us ramble on or you want to listen to me ramble on in written form, you can do that. So, all
right, well, before we go away on this one, Jim, the playoffs continue. Got a pair of interesting one in the Western Conference playoffs here. Golden State, Houston, and Minnesota and the Lakers.
Yeah, Golden State, Houston is going to be game 2. That's Wednesday night. But tonight, I can't wait for this one. The Timberwolves and the Lakers play at 9 o'clock on TNT. Boy, if we always pride ourselves on being objective and providing unbiased coverage about the Lakers.
That's what we do.
But I have to say that I really enjoyed the heck out of Saturday's performance by Minnesota. I mean, but I am curious to see in Game 2 tonight whether that was something that the Timberwolves can replicate or whether that was kind of a fluky. I mean, they made 21 3-pointers in that game. So if they shoot like that, I think it's going to be a short series. But, I mean, it's difficult to shoot 50% from 3 on any night, but especially in the playoffs. But that was something else, the way that they played in that game. And it seemed like they just match up really well against the Lakers. We've talked about how the T-Wolves seem to match up well against Denver, for example, also. But their size just gave the Lakers a lot of problems in that game. And I don't think the Lakers have a ton of options as far as bigs that they can put on the court to counteract some of what Minnesota does. But I mean, this is almost like a must-win for the Lakers tonight. So I think this will be one of the more highly rated TV broadcasts of the season in LA.
I know you'll be locked in. And to your point, though, I mean, LeBron had 19. It was 8 of 18, 1 of 5 from 3. You got to imagine he's going to, knock down a few more of those.
He'll bounce back, yeah.
Luka had 37, but that's to your point.
They cut off everybody else, though. Luka had a big game, but they didn't get a ton. Austin Reeves had a really rough night as well. So it'll be interesting. And then quickly, too, on the Golden State-Houston game tomorrow night, man. He had 3 or 4 shots that you just, if you're the opponent, you just like, what are we supposed to do on that? He's falling out of bounds. He's shooting it high enough to hit the rim, and it still goes in and beats the shot clock. So that was amazing.
Let me interject quickly.
Sure.
Is he the player right now? Like, of all the players right now, just close your eyes right now and you hear, you got to pick one player to go watch play in the postseason right now.
I think so. Yeah. I think he might not be the best player in the NBA right now, but in terms of getting your money's worth with the ticket, yeah, I think you might be right. He might be the guy that just always delivers. So it was an interesting game 1. I thought the Rockets, people were concerned about their offense because of the top playoff teams. They've struggled the most offensively. Their defense has kind of carried them. But, man, they had a struggle to get to 80 points in that game on Sunday. So that'll be interesting to see, if they can generate a lot more offense, because if you play offense at that level, you're going to be out very quickly. Golden State's going to, just with Curry and Butler, they're able to score enough. I think that if you can't make shots the way Houston did in game 1, they'll be in big trouble.
All right, it's Mr. Jim Eichenhofer again. Don't forget to go to pelicans.com. See his accompanying piece there as well. Plus, continue to listen to us. We got 12 more now players as we've gone through Zion and Trey Murphy. You can continue to check those out throughout the next 2 weeks here as we lead you closer and closer to the NBA Draft Lottery Night, which is May 12th. Thanks for listening to the New Orleans Pelicans Podcast.
Thanks for listening to the New Orleans Pelicans Podcast. Join us 3 times per week on Pelicans.com, the Pelicans mobile app, the iHeartRadio app, or where you get your podcasts. And be sure to give Jim and Gus a follow on X at Jim_Eichenhofer and GCat_17. We'll see you next time, right here on the New Orleans Pelicans Podcast.